right, my name is Lindsay Haddix, and I have the pleasure of being the executive director at East Bay Housing Organizations, where I've been for just under 2 years. And as many of you know, I was a proud EBHO member before joining as staff. And I'm so excited to see so many familiar and new names and faces in this webinar space with us today. We are going to jump in and talk about the Concord Naval Weapons Station, a little bit of history, a little bit of present, and a lot of future, because we know we still have a lot of to look forward to as this site develops. So with that, before we jump into the presentation and I turn it over, I just want to make sure you know who's going to be presenting today. So we're so thrilled to have Natalie Bonowit, who many of you know, longtime friend of EBHO and a former EBHO board member, who's representing herself as a principal at Bonowit Development Services. Natalie has personally been involved with the Concord Naval Weapons Station project, saga, drama for, I'll let her tell you, but it's a lot of years. And so we're so excited to have her to set the table and talk a little bit about where we've come from. And then I'm so thrilled to also have Emily Boyd and Josh Roden from Brookfield Residential, who are the leads on the Concord Naval Weapons Station project redevelopment. Josh is the president of Northern California, and Emily is the director of business strategies. And we're just so grateful that they have volunteered their time to join us today to talk about this project. And I would be, of course, remiss if I didn't also mention that we're joined by EBHO's policy manager, Megan Nguyen. It's a little bittersweet. Some of you know that Megan will be leaving EBHO very soon to start her next chapter in grad school. So this is EBHO's last Lunch and Learn with Megan as staff person, but we know that Megan's not going to go far, and we'll see her at Lunch and Learns as an attendee and supporter in the future. So I'm so glad Megan could join us, and she leads, as you probably know, our Concord work at the moment. And the next slide is going to be, I'm going to hand it over to Megan, who's going to talk a little bit about EBHO and what we do.
Thanks so much, Lindsay, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We appreciate you all joining, taking the time, whether you're an avid Lunch and Learn attendee or you're just joining us for the first time. If you're not familiar with EBHO or want a refresher, our mission is to mobilize the power and wisdom of our membership to produce, preserve, and protect affordable housing opportunities for low-income communities across the East Bay. And so what that means in our advocacy and in our campaigns is really taking for over 40 years, we've taken a 3Ps approach to our work to really center a comprehensive approach to housing justice. And so really briefly, we could spend an hour probably each of these Ps, but production being to build more affordable housing, right? We know we need more units that are affordable for our communities. So that can include prioritizing funding for neo-affordable development, using existing public land for the public good for community and serving affordable housing. We also believe in strengthening preservation work of housing that is affordable, and that can include tools like tenant or community opportunity to purchase acts to give tenants the right of first notice and an opportunity to purchase their rental building when an owner decides to sell, and to support our partners, our community land trust partners, and other organizations really leading in preservation work. And lastly, but not least, protections. We focus, and we know that tenants need a safe place to live, safe, stable, and place to live. And the policies like just cause for eviction, anti-harassment ordinances, rent stabilization, these are all critical tools in a larger toolbox to protect tenants and ensure that they can stay where they are and not be displaced in our communities. So at EBHO, we believe in many things. We believe that housing is a human right and everyone deserves a safe and stable, affordable home, and that this work is very intersectional and meaningfully important to achieving racial, economic, environmental, social, disability justice, right? So we know that collective action builds more power and that more voices in the room all of you here today is really important because we need all of your voices to shape the housing policy that we want to see. And that is especially true, as I mentioned, with today's topic, with the Naval Weapons Station being such a transformative generational opportunity to build an inclusive community, one that has good homes, good jobs, right, and great amenities for all in our community, right, across a range of incomes. And so if you're not a member, we do invite you to be involved with us, to join us as an individual or organizational member today. Much of our work happens in our committees, and I'll talk a little bit about this in a slide, organized around specific campaigns or geographical focus. And that's really a space where you as members can shape our campaign strategy. So we definitely invite you to be involved. And so if you're on today's webinar, chances are you care about Concord, you care about the largest city in Contra Costa County, you care about addressing housing affordability in Concord and really, as I mentioned, shaping the future of this important generational project. And with that, we highly encourage you and invite you to join our Concord committee. We do meet every month on the first Tuesday from 2 to 3 p.m. online on Zoom. So, we hope that that makes it a little bit more accessible. We know it's in the middle of the workday. And so if you have a conflict and you're not able to join, we still do invite you to contact my colleagues, Davina and Joey. Their emails are on the slide for more information, or to connect one-on-one if you're not able to make it to our monthly meetings. But that is really a space for you all to shape the direction of EBHO's work and what we should focus on. And I should say that a huge priority for the committee is, of course, the Naval Weapons Station, and that's long been the case since EBHO has been involved in the Naval Weapons Station advocacy and work for so long. But we also do focus on other important campaigns in Concord, whether that's related to funding, to rezoning efforts that are happening, and tenant protections. All of that is something we try to cover in the committee. So we do invite you to join us. And as I've started to briefly touch on, I just want to highlight, if you haven't been familiar with the Naval Weapons Station, you're just hearing about it now. EBHO has really long been involved in this project since 2007. We've been involved in advocating for affordable housing as part of the redevelopment process. And so being the member-driven organization that we are, as I mentioned earlier, EBHO has played a really central and sustained role in advancing affordable housing at the Naval Weapons Station. We are also part of a coalition called the Community Coalition for a Sustainable Concord, which is a diverse coalition that is and has been committed to bringing community benefits and equity from many angles to the project. But especially we as EBHO has been focused on advocating for affordable housing, ensuring that that is a priority on the project, and specifically advocating and securing that 25% of the housing is affordable to low-income residents. We've long organized and hosted public forums as prior master developers were considered. We work with local partners like Monument Impact, other key partners like public advocates, all of these partners to ensure and urge the city to commit to that 25% requirement on all homes, which follows a goal that was set by the adopted area plan, which you can read a lot more about and is available on the city's website, as my colleagues will link in the chat. But the area plan requires that 25% of homes built on the Naval Weapons Station are affordable to households that make no more than 80% of AMI, the area median income, which I should say, I wasn't at EBHO at the time, but I know from learning from those before me and those who have been involved that that was fairly unprecedented at the time for us to secure such a win. With that, we have a lot more for you in this hour, so I know I'm going through this quickly, but we'll have a lot of room for Q&A and questions. But before I turn it over to Natalie, I'd love to launch one of our first of a few polls. We'd love to hear from you today to hear how familiar you are with the project. Have you heard of the Naval Weapons Station? Have you been engaged? We definitely are glad to see. Hopefully you all can see these results too, but we have quite a mix in the room, which is great. I think it's pretty evenly split so far. between the four answers, which is what we hoped, right? We hope to have a range of people in this room, and hopefully you walk away learning something, and finding more ways to engage. That is our goal for the day. So thank you for engaging in our poll. We'll have a couple more towards later in the hour, but with that, I would love to turn it over to Natalie Bonowit to give us a brief overview of the project and, some key details as to how we got where we are today.
Well, thank you so much, Megan and Lindsay, and it's really a pleasure to be here with Brookfield because it really does represent enormous progress. As you said, we've been working on this for a very long time, and we are working at a steady pace, and that is exciting, and we have a long way to go. So I'm going to share my slide deck and provide a brief overview. And I should mention, excuse me, I am focused, I have a big focus on housing and the homeless collaborative component of the base. But as Megan said, it's really not just about the housing at all. And it's really important to remember it's one piece, a key piece, but there's an extraordinary amount of other components to this project. So we'll get into some of them, but I do want to acknowledge right now that I have a housing bent. So first, I'm going to just share a little bit about my experience with base reuse, and then really briefly just talk about base reuse law and what that means for Concord. And then specifically how that base reuse law translated to Concord Naval Weapons Station. And then within that, the homeless collaborative component based on the base reuse law and the terms that have been achieved so far that are integrated into the plan and the role between the homeless collaborative and EBHO's Concord Committee. So, and I promise this will be brief. If I can change my sheet. So for me personally, I have had the pleasure of working on multiple base reuses. I work on Concord Naval Weapons Station on behalf of one of the developers, the nonprofit developers, representing Mercy Housing. But I've also been representing community-based organizations and the city of San Francisco on Treasure Island in various capacities since for over 20 years. And also representing a service provider in Alameda, and that group is working with Brookfield also. And so collectively between the three different projects, I've seen from planning stage through implementation, and really am confident that we have a long way to go in Concord, but like I said, we're moving in that right direction. So really briefly, what is base reuse law from a perspective of opportunities and benefits for our unhoused neighbors? So the base reuse law started through the Base Closure Community Redevelopment and Homeless Assistance Act of 1994. And that law was basically came after the McKinney-Vento law that said, if there's a federal surplus property, homeless groups and people would have access to those resources. But as there were so many base closures throughout the 1990s and 2000s, this law really focused on base reuse within this broader context of how surplus federal property should be used. In essence, though, once a base was put on the closure list, there had to be a local reuse authority, an LRA, that was approved by the Department of Defense. And that is the entity that negotiates. And in the case of Concord, that entity is the city of Concord. And it's that entity that is responsible for the redevelopment plan, as well as from the homeless provider's perspective, it's the one that submits what's called the notice of interest, and that eventually led to the legally binding agreements. So that's all technical. From a Concord perspective, as Megan said, this started in, Concord became designated for closure in 2005. And in 2007, the collective documentation was submitted from the homeless groups via the Contra Costa County Homeless Continuum of Care. And that was submitted to the local reuse authority, which is the city of Concord. And I see on this call that there are folks who are part of the Homeless Collaborative, and I'm super happy to see you. And if you feel that I missed anything, please pitch in. But in essence, what came out of those negotiations were two legally binding agreements. One was with the food bank, and a brief summary of what that legally binding agreement is on this slide. And then there were two legally binding agreements with the Homeless Collaborative, and I'll explain more about those in a moment. So, what is the Homeless Collaborative? It is a group of developers, nonprofit developers, and service providers who, for the submission of, to gain the opportunities that were available via the law, put together what is in essence the notice of interest. And through that, again, we got the legally binding agreement. So what was achieved? Even though there's a lot of negotiations and what was hoped for was not necessarily achieved, but what was achieved is a minimum of 130 units on site for homeless households and 130 additional units somewhere. Could be on site, meaning the Concord Naval Weapons Station, or it could be somewhere else within Concord. But that's why when they say 130 to 260, we don't know exactly where those 130 units, but the minimum floor for households, for homes for unhoused neighbors will be 130. And then as part of those legally binding agreements, they need to be near amenities. And for the developers in the room, it has to basically be eligible for affordable housing financing, and that the land that is delivered is developable, meaning it's entitled and stubbed and remediated, etc. The second agreement, and that is baked into the plan, are 16 acres of land. And the legally binding agreement also says and is really explicit about how that land is delivered. And frankly, that's very technical and not improvement, but it is a key component. So as Megan said, those units are part of a broader benefit, and that is the 25% of the total. So there will be approximately 13,000 total units at Concord Naval Weapons Station. And so that's a minimum of 3,200 new affordable homes. And those are badly needed. And those are over time, right? It's really clear about phasing and when they come. But certainly within the first phase, there will be one development that will have the units reserved for unhoused neighbors. But again, it's part of a broader supply of affordable housing. So the Homeless Collaborative and the EBHO Concord Committee meet jointly. Every member of the Homeless Collaborative is also a member of the Concord Committee, but the Concord Committee is broader. And so Megan already said that meets monthly, and we welcome folks who are interested in attending. But, and again, I'm focused on the housing component. This is EBHO, but it is also extraordinarily important, as I said before, to acknowledge the other elements of the plan, which are also world-class, aspiring, and critical to having healthy communities. And those are the parks and the educational opportunities. And anyway, in any case, I will look to Brookfield to talk about all the other elements, but I just want to establish again how important it is for the housing to be in the context of other key points. And so I guess for me, I want to, well, actually, Megan, are we waiting for questions to the end?
Yes, I think we'll collect them. So we're inviting folks. If you have any questions at any point, please put them in the chat, and my colleagues are collecting them. We'll definitely have ample time to be able to cover them. But thank you so much, Natalie.
Yeah, again, that was just some historical background from on the housing and the affordable housing and homeless component. Thank you very much. Oh, Lindsay, I think
Yeah, gotcha. I unmuted one, but not the other. Thank you so much, Natalie, for that that very jam-packed history lesson. You did such a great job condensing a very complicated long history into a few succinct slides. And now I'd love to turn it over to the Brookfield team to talk about where we are today and where we're going in the future.
Thank you, Lindsay. So Brookfield, we entered the equation back in the second round. So the first round, Lennar ended up with the project going through an RFQ, RFP process. And then they fell out roughly, I think it was 2019. And then in 2020, we participated in the second round. We ended up losing out to the Concord First Partners. And then they were engaged with the city, negotiating a term sheet for about a year and a half, I believe. And then they ended up falling out. And then we entered back in again in 2023. And we ended up being the only applicant that there was two groups, but one of them really didn't complete the RFQ process. And so then we were the only ones. So we ended up entering into our NDA and then the exclusive negotiating agreement, and then we got a term sheet approved in March of 2024. And so it's been a learning curve, and we've been involved, for a number of years, just understanding the community, the history. I think one of the things that Natalie touched on a little bit is there's been a massive amount of community engagement over the last 20 years. Funny enough, I actually, our first house was in Concord, and I signed up to be on the community, I don't know, engagement committee group or whatever that they had at the time. But then I moved, I think the following year. So that was in 2005. And so they did a long community engagement process. And like Natalie mentioned, they arrived at the area plan. And so part of the education for us was understanding, what's the framework that's been developed already. And in all reality, when we came up with our conceptual land use plan, the community and everybody that was participating at the time actually came up with a very good area plan, which essentially is a general plan for the 2,300 acres. And at that time, in the 2012 timeframe is when they approved it all. They still had, part of that programming and planning was the roughly 2,400 acres. That's now the East Bay Regional Park District land. And so that was transferred to the parks, I think in 2018 or something like that. And so they went through a long process that included, roughly 5,000 acres. So the 2,300 acres that's part of the EDC, the Economic Development Conveyance portion that we're working on, includes the 25% affordable housing. It has over 886 acres of parks, open space, trails, creek corridors. So even within the 2,300 acres, there's quite a bit of green space. And then the restoration of Mount Diablo Creek, which is it's not a very well-known creek, but it is actually one of the larger seasonal creeks that runs through the central part of Contra Costa County, and used to have, I think it's, Emily, is it salmon and stuff that would actually run up that creek?
Steelhead trout.
Steelhead trout. Emily will tell you a little bit later. She actually just did a walk with the Friends of Concord Creek up the existing creek. Another significant component is the project labor agreement. So back when we did the first engagement and lost out at that point, we actually did learn with engaging with the city council and the community that the project labor agreement was a significant component of it. And so we went and sat down and negotiated with the Building Trades Council of Contra Costa County and were able to execute that back in 2020. So when it came to the round that we actually won, we had already gotten that completed, which was a very big hurdle. Not a lot of groups would be comfortable doing that ahead of time. And so we were able to get that completed, which was a big one for the city council and for the community. So going to the next slide. We've got some of the highlights in our term sheet. So in March of over a year ago, we got our term sheet approved with the city. It's something like 60 pages long, so it's almost like a light DDA. And in there, it identifies a whole bunch of the different components of quote, the deal. And so part of that includes a campus district for higher education, 120 acres, 55 acres for schools, in addition to that 120 acres. There's a 10 acres for a food bank, and 16 acres for permanent supportive housing, which is part of one of the LBAs. The 4 acres for a veterans hall. Reason being for that, there's an existing veterans hall in downtown Concord, which is a very, very old building and is not in great condition. So they were a group that really felt like this would be a great opportunity to find a new home. And this being a former military base, it seemed very fitting for them to have a spot out there. And then we have a number of financial commitments or contributions on a number of community benefits, including the Tournament Sports Park and Citywide Park, a library and civic center, schools, fire stations, and then affordable housing subsidy. So in a number of these, we actually have the ability to, for instance, like the Tournament Sports Park and Citywide Park, or the library and civic center, schools, fire stations, we actually can either put up the money for that commitment, or we could actually put that towards building it ourselves for the project. So that was one piece where Brookfield we're one of the larger master plan developers around the US and Canada. And one of the things that we do very much focus on is how do we create special communities and something that people really want to be in, live, work, play. And so the way we oftentimes bring that to life earlier is by being able to invest in some of these components up earlier, not necessarily right up front, but earlier, because that provides some of the aspects of it that they may, somebody that's, whether they might live there or work there, they may not benefit from early on if we didn't do it. So we see being able to bring some of these to life earlier a value add to the community and the project. And then the overall infrastructure is almost $1.7 billion of infrastructure work. So there's the 2,300 acres. You can go to the next slide. Not only does that include a lot of work on the site, but it also requires a lot of infrastructure to be brought to the site. So as an example, there's the recycled water line would come, we have to bring it all the way from Central Sanitation's current facility, which is about 1.5 miles away. And so we have to bring that line all the way over. And then to create the pressure in both the domestic and the recycled water systems, we have to put a water tank system up in the hills of the East Bay Regional Parks area. And then also have do improvements along Willow Pass Road that comes into the project and out of the project. And then we're also anticipating having to do some street improvements to adjacent streets to the project. So lots of infrastructure to be built over what we are planning 5 phases of 5 main phases of development. So these different colors represent the 5 different phases. And so as you can imagine, this is 12,272 residential units in total under the area plan, and then just over 6 million square feet of commercial, retail, institutional, civic uses. So that's a very big amount of construction on the vertical side. And so we've broken that down into 5 major phases. And there's a few different reasons for that. One of them is just being able to create a bite-sized area to focus and plan in. And then also with how the constraints of the site set up. And I'm sure we'll have some questions about the environmental conditions. So today, quote today, the Navy still owns all the property within the 2,300 acres of the EDC, the Economic Development Conveyance Area. And that needs to be, they need to do a finding of suitability to transfer, FOST for short, which is a environmental path where once they've done a significant amount of testing, determine that the property is, quote, clean, and have gotten the agency approvals and essentially, our consultants and the city's consultants reviewing confirmation, then they'll be able to FOST the property. And so today there's roughly 1,000 acres that's, quote, clean, and would be the first FOST transfer. So some of our phasing, it looks a little cut up, and some of that is because there are areas that are able to be developed sooner rather than later, and others that the Navy is continuing to do some cleanup on. The other piece of it is there's, if you're out there on the site, it's relatively, I wouldn't say flat, but it doesn't have it's not too mountainous, but there are definitely some hills out there. And we have sort of 2 drainage sheds. So that pink area to the left of it sort of drains towards, the left-hand side. And then to the right of that, it drains more towards the north or the right side. And so we have different infrastructure components that would be feeding into those from a gravity feed, whether it's storm or sanitary sewers. So there's also some infrastructure components that align with how we're phasing the plan. So I think you can go to the next one, Emily. And so this is the conceptual land use plan that we developed as part of the RFQ process. It really hasn't changed much at all from our initial concept on it. Once we get to the specific plan process, which Emily will go through a little bit more detail, our timeline. Currently, we're still negotiating with the Navy. So the Navy will transfer the land to the city, which is called the LRA, Land Reuse Authority. So they'll transfer the land to the city first, and then we'll be taking the land from the city. So it's a deal that's really between the city and the Navy, but we're also part of that negotiation because we end up having to pay for more or less all of it. And so we're still in that process. Once we get through this Navy term sheet negotiation, which we hope to be towards the fall timeframe, then we'll really kick off the specific plan in more detail. And so there will be some changes to it, but what you see here is it'll be very, very similar to what you see here. And so the yellow areas are more pure residential. The purple shaded areas, lighter purple is mixed use. Darker purple is more intense mixed use. The blue is the campus district, higher education campus district, and the salmon pinkish color is a commercial, we call it the commercial innovation district area. And then there's 2 on the right-hand side, there's 2 large darker green areas. That's the Tournament Sports Park, Citywide Park. And so today, you actually can drive through the site on Willow Pass Road. So Willow Pass Road comes through downtown Concord, if you're coming from the sort of southwest, and you can drive right through the site. And then Willow Pass Road connects up with Highway 4 at an existing intersection right there. There are gated entrances off of Willow Pass Road, so you can't really drive down into the base at all, unless you get go through the permit process. So there's a gate guard. Gomentum is the current user of a good portion of the existing property within the EDC. So Gomentum is a Contra Costa Transit Authority venture where they've set up autonomous vehicle testing grounds essentially. And so there's autonomous vehicle testing going on out there. So it's really just Gomentum and a cattle grazer that currently is out there on the property. Let me see if there's any other highlights. As part of our current work on it, we are doing like a traffic study right now, and we've been working with the utilities, the various utilities, sewer, water, electric, to identify what kind of constraints may there be, our demand that we're anticipating for the project, how does that fit with the current utilities master plans. Fortunately, there aren't really any kind of significant issues at this point. I'd say one of our major concerns is power. PG&E and being able to service a large project like this. So there's that aspect. And then transportation is also going to be a big one. We're going to want to include as much of a variety of vehicular use, of whether that's through bikes, autonomous vehicles, and it could be even individual, like scooters and e-bikes are popular these days. So we're going to be thinking through what's the best type of infrastructure to provide that also solves today's, but what might be the future of transportation. So that's one of the fun aspects of it as well. All right, I will hand it over to Emily now.
Thanks, Josh. Oh, did it stop sharing or am I good? Okay, so Josh gave high level background and the area plan. So I'm going to pick up kind of where the project schedule is and where we see it going over the next several years. And as Josh said, five-phase plan, we estimate each one of those will take 6 to 8 years. So when we talk about this as our legacy project, Josh and I hope that we'll be around to see the end of it, but we're talking probably about 40 years from the time we start turning dirt out there. So we're in it for the long run. But here for the next couple years, I'm going to share our project schedule. So I think we've hit on most of these points, but just as a quick refresher, 2006 to 2010 was when the reuse plan was put into place. So a lot of that first community engagement that resulted in the area plan, which was how really the whole feedback and community input was captured into the vision of what the area plan would be, which ultimately resulted in that the colored map that Josh just shared. That was the result of that. So kind of giving indication of where the different uses would be in general. And then as we move into the specific plan, we'll put a finer point on all of those and really get into the nitty gritty of what's going to exist within each one of those colored blocks. And I think that you noticed before, and Josh might hit on with transportation, the mixed use, higher density items, components of the project in that dark purple area, that's by design that they're up near BART. To someone's earlier point, the sustainable permanent long-term housing and our supportive housing, as well as a lot of the affordable components, need to be near transit to take advantage of a lot of the funding and things. So that was by design that a lot of those uses were put near BART and near access points on Highway 4 at the beginning of the project. So 2024 to 2027, we anticipate where we are right now, and that's as far as the planning and the zoning, bringing that area plan to life, working through, again, concurrently with the negotiations of the Navy, starting the process of the planning and getting started on the specific plan, and then really getting into the specific plan, hopefully toward the end of this year, the beginning of 2026. And that will be a several year process. And then 2028 and beyond, site preparation, reviews, approval, going through planning commission, going through the LRA, which is currently the sitting city council for the city of Concord, working through public workshops, and so really then digging down into the specific uses within that more general and broad area plan. So we came up with this graphic because we realized as we were talking through these things that it sounds like it's get to this point and stop and then move on to the next point, but there are a lot of parts and pieces that are moving concurrently. So this is our best effort to tell the story about what's going on parallel tracks while we're talking through term sheet negotiation with the Navy. So that's here in the light blue on the second row across. But at the same time, as Josh was saying, as we're getting toward the end of the term sheet negotiation and putting signatures on pages, hopefully here toward the end of this summer and beginning of fall, we'll start hiring the specific plan consultant, and actually that will be done through the city. They will hire a specific plan consultant, but then Brookfield will really start engaging heavily with getting the traffic studies, getting the environmental studies, getting all of the technical components that will drive the CEQA, or the California Environmental Quality Act approval, which is another big threshold to get passed for full approval and entitlement of the project. So hiring of the specific plan consultant, working through drafts with the LRA alongside Brookfield, the administrative draft of the specific plan finalized, and then comments. And all of these things go through with the EIR, that's the environmental impact report. All of these things culminating toward the end of 2028 with city council approvals toward the end of 2028 if we're tracking on the current schedule that we hope to. I like this could just say Emily's life along here, this long arrow that is continuous all along the bottom. That is me engaging with the community, making sure that I'm meeting with folks and answering questions and staying engaged continuously throughout this entire process. So even as things have been quietly going on behind the scenes with negotiations with the Navy, and unfortunately that's not a lot of public facing, I am trying to stay out there as much as possible and engaging with the community and making sure they know that we're still here and we're working feverishly, but we're kind of like a duck with our legs going crazy under the water, paddling us along and looking really calm right along the surface. Okay, so this is again same time frame, so the times haven't changed. We're still 2024 to 2030. Other things that are going along at the same time. So the DDA, which is the Disposition and Development Agreement with the City of Concord, and the Development Agreement. So these things being drafted, negotiated and finalized, and that will ultimately be the final binding document. So the components of the term sheet that Josh talked about previously, that's the framework. And then those will be the components. And to his point, some of those term sheets can be pretty light. The one that I linked in the chat there is about 60 pages. So it's pretty involved as far as term sheets go. So we hope that that's really a pretty good structure of what will ultimately become the approved DDA. Also with fun things like the creek and birds and bunnies and all the things that are already out there on the site. We also will have robust engagement with the resource agency permitting. So federal entities such as U.S. Fish and Wildlife, state entities like California Fish and Wildlife, the Regional Water Quality Board, Army Corps, et cetera, et cetera. So there will be, and sorry, it looks like I got a little, I will share all these too. I don't think we mentioned that at the top. I can share all of these slides. So anything that's looks a little odd here in the presentation, I will fix and get out to everybody, and you can digest it when you've got a bit more time, because I want to be cognizant and make sure we leave time for questions and answer at the end as well. So quick run through on community engagement, that big continuous arrow along the bottom that we're trying to stay out there and stay engaged with the community through what we know is a very long project. At the very beginning of this, when we became engaged, a lot of what we heard as far as trying to engage with folks was that they were fatigued, and that's that's understandable. This is 20 something years with the same project, and we had a lot of people that said, it's never going to happen. You're never going to get there. I've been following this project forever. We're trying. We hope that we're overcoming some of that. We've made a lot of really good progress in the 2 years that we've been involved in it, but we get it. So we try to give presentations as requested and stay current with our community, with our city council updates, but we understand too that when things get really exciting that we're looking forward to is with the specific plan, and when we're really able to take comments and take suggestions that are going to be really actionable and that we can really show folks where those are going to end up in the final plan. So here's what we did in 2024. We did 274 attendees across our workshop events, an open house, topic specific workshop that we did on parks and open spaces, a virtual open house. One thing that we're really focused on trying to do is meet people at different times of day and different locations and different virtual in-person to try to meet as many people in the community and the region as we can where they are. We've had individual community and stakeholder engagement specific meetings as well. So that's basically all of the emails and things that you see, they make it directly to me. So if you have homeowners association groups, if you've got your Friends of Concord Creeks, if you've got your housing groups, if you've got pretty much everyone that has an interest in this project, and there are a lot, I am here to put you in contact with the right folks or to get you information or do presentations as requested. Okay. Again, we're looking for feedback. We want to make sure that as things are changing, and it's case in point, just the past 5 years since COVID, a lot of the project planning that went into this prior, there were a lot of great ideas that now feel a little stale. So we'll need to revisit those. For example, how people go to work and how people go to school has changed significantly. So the elements of that campus district are probably a little bit more in flux right now, and we'll be looking to re-engage with the community and find out what exactly the needs and wants are in current 2025 2026 versus where they might have been 5 or 10 years ago when we were getting input. So just trying to keep a finger on the pulse of what the needs and the wants of the community are in these different ways. This is what he was referring to. This is a fun thing I got to do. We raised more than a couple eyebrows out on the site as people said, oh, when you park your car and you drive it through there, and we said, no, we're not driving through, we're going to walk. And I think we surprised more than a few gate guards at Concord Naval Weapons Station that we were actually going to be going out on foot. So I went out with Friends of Concord Creek. It had been quite a while since some of the environmental scientists had been able to put eyes on the actual creek. And so this was an effort to get them out there so that they could see what the condition is. I'm not an environmental scientist, but they said they were actually pleasantly surprised that it was in really good shape. As to be expected, nobody's out there really touching it or doing much of anything with it. But like Josh said, it's kind of little known, but it does run practically the entire length of the Concord Naval Weapons Station. And so we hiked a portion of it, and this is just an example of some special interest kind of folks that wanted to see a specific component. And so we worked with the Navy and worked with the city of Concord to get them permitted and out hiking around the site. And it was a beautiful day out there, and we did not find any rattlesnakes, just a couple of coyotes and some cool birds and stuff. So it was a successful day all around. Last week I was able to go out too. So again, kind of keeping in the, we're meeting people where they are and trying to engage and find folks that might not be, available at city council or didn't really know or kind of just taken their eye off the status of the project, meeting people where they are. So last week I went out to Sidegate Brewing and sat for a couple hours, met with 14 brand new people who hadn't engaged in the project in a long time. So that was a really big success. And then July, I'll be going actually out to Epidemic Ales and sitting there from 5 to 8, no presentation. I just show up with my map. People love when they see a map and they're like, hey, I live right there. What's going on next to this? And just taking the opportunity to get them signed up for the updates and telling them where we are with the project and where we hope to be in the next few months moving forward. So again, I'll send all these out so you don't have to worry about screenshotting. There is a project website that I think was shared over in the chat at the beginning, along with the City of Concord's website for the project. That email right there comes directly to me. So you're welcome to use my email if you've gotten it out on a business card or this, and then the QR code there will take you to the website as well. Okay, sorry. I know we've got just a few minutes left and I will be quiet so that we can get some questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Emily. Yeah, it was a lot to condense into an hour. We knew it was ambitious and everyone did a really great job. You know, I had a few questions that I was going to take kind of moderator privilege, but I want to make sure that the attendings get their questions asked. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of things that we saw in the chat. One question from Shanti from Saha about engagement with the tribal communities and efforts that Brookfield's made to engage with that community. And then the other question from Tracy from Methuen about if there's any limitations to the development and the growth at the site because of water or limitations. And then also, you know, given fire season is like 365 now in parts of the Bay Area, how that might be impacting how the electrical infrastructure is going to be built.
Do you want to take either of those, Josh? So I think I can speak. I'll speak real quickly too. I know that we're engaging with a consultant group that specializes in wildfire hardening. We also have the benefit of our lead planner, Barry Long with UDA, Urban Design Associates, who you might have seen out at some workshops and things. He's actually also leading the rebuilding of Paradise. And so he's definitely approaches the planning of his projects with lean toward fire hardening and wildfire. We actually are not at Concord Naval within a high fire zone as far as the FEMA maps go, so we know that part. But as far as electric goes, we underground most everything now, so I guess that is one of the benefits of not having a lot of infrastructure existing on the site. It's incredibly expensive to put out there, but we will be putting it all in pretty much from scratch. And so Josh, I'm not sure if we can speak to the water capacity right now. I know you've had some conversations with some groups.
Yeah, Lindsay, are you talking about just water capacity for like domestic water?
I'll let, and I'm sorry, I misspoke. Tracy's a consultant. Tracy, I'll let you chime in if you had any more additional.
Just the idea of how, you know, there's only so much natural water at this point, and how schools and different commercial versus residential can be developed, and is it hindering, or do you have to look at it a little bit differently now with changes to make sure there's enough water?
Yes, definitely. So like Contra Costa Water District's the essential provider of the water for this area, and in their plan and long-term plan, they have enough water for it. But then we're also including, as part of the sustainability plan for the overall development, is the recycled water system. So essentially, sanitary sewer will go to Central Sand. Central Sand will be creating a recycled water plant and program so that they can distribute recycled water back to the project. And then along the way, I'm sure they'll be able to tap into other users. So there is definitely that. Interestingly enough, I mean, as development in general has definitely come a long ways from, 20 plus years ago. So the amount of water use today is from either a commercial or residential use is dramatically less than it used to be. So, the type of fixtures and faucets and toilets and everything that is in both commercial and residential is quite a bit less than it used to be. And so much so, there's actually in Dublin, we developed like a 1,700 home development, and all the landscape, common area landscape, and parks and stuff was tied into the recycled water system that DSRSD has. And DSRSD actually ran out of capacity for recycled water. So there was so much recycled water being used, we ended up having to go back and switch some of the landscape to potable because DSRSD was able to be oversubscribed on recycled water use. So I think in the, as far as constraints, it doesn't seem like it will be a constraint here. So I don't know if you're welcome to ask any other questions, if that causes any questions.
I just want to also be mindful of time because we only have 2 minutes left. So I would encourage people to join. First of all, thank you, Emily, for answering that question in the chat. To sign up for the listserv, to go to their website, to go have a pale ale with Emily in July, because we just knew we weren't going to have enough time to, again, it's a huge project and there's just not enough time to cover everything in this short time we have together. So I just want to wrap things up so we can end promptly on time by thanking everyone for joining us and reminding you that EBHO is going to be hosting our annual Faith and Justice Breakfast in August, August 28th in Contra Costa County, Walnut Creek. We'll be launching our webpage likely tomorrow or Monday with more details. You can buy tickets. We're also accepting sponsorships. If you've not attended our Faith and Justice Breakfast in the past, I really recommend you try to make time to join us. We're co-hosting with Multi Faith in Action this year, and we're really excited to be working with them. And additionally, also a quick reminder that none of this would be possible without our funding partners. So I want to thank them. They're listed here and also on our website. And also finally, we are a membership organization. So if you are not an EBHO member or you're not sure if you've renewed your membership for 2025, would encourage you to please go to ebho.org/membership to join or renew. We have a sliding scale for dues for organizations and individuals. Dues start as low as $5 for students and residents of low-income housing because we never want financial burden to keep folks from being a part of our movement. So if you have a question about, again, your membership status, you can email staff@ebho.org and we'll get back to you. But would love for anyone that's on this call who's not renewed or not joined EBHO to consider joining us to support this work. It's our funding partners and our membership that helps make this type of program free and available. So, and you can also learn more about Concord Committee, where we talk about this project a lot. Thank you, Joey. So also, hot off the press, we are going to be doing our summer Lunch and Learn series, continuing into July. We're going to host a few of our architect members and talk about how they engage with affordable housing projects. Actually, August 21st, because of our Faith and Justice event being on the 28th, we're going to be holding a Public Land for Public Good updates that our Senior Policy Director, Jeff Levin, is going to be hosting. And then very excited about our September 25th Lunch and Learn that will be led by our Communications Manager, Kate Young, with some other partners about how to use the internet and social media to organize your community and turn people out. So please stay tuned for the updates on our website so you can RSVP for those. And as always, we'll be posting this recording and the slides on our website likely next week. Again, I want to thank Natalie and Josh and Emily for joining us today, and all of you that could stay for the full hour. Really appreciated this. I know I learned a lot. I was one of the people that clicked familiar on the button, and I definitely walked away with more information and more knowledge today. So I want to thank you all for that and encourage everyone to stay up to date for the next 40 years about this project by signing up for Brookfield's listserv and attending any community events that you can in the future. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Appreciate you all.
Thank you.